All right, so go ahead and get started with today's webinar. So today is our new partner introduction. This is a webinar we put together for those of us that those of you that have recently joined the Zysel Partner Program, or maybe for some of those of you out there that have been a partner for a while but are just looking for a refresher on the products we offer. The idea behind today's presentation is just to sort of give you a high-level overview of some of our main product lines, some of the main applications they could be used for, or selling features. We're going to be going through a lot of it kind of quick. If you see something in here you like, reach out to your salesperson and let them know what you'd like to learn a little bit more about. We do have more in-depth presentations where we go in-depth on some of these different product lines and solutions throughout the month that they can let you know about. Or if we don't have something scheduled, they can put something together just for you to go more in-depth on it. As we go through today, I will try to answer questions. Send them in using the question and answer interface in Zoom. Don't use chat. It's hard for me to see chat as we're doing the webinar, but if you send them with question and answer, I will be able to see them as we go through today's presentation. So we'll go ahead and get started. Just a quick little bit of background on Zysel. We have been making computer networking products for a little over 30 years. And that includes selling them here in North America. We got our start all the way back in 1989. At this point, we have over 100 million devices deployed out in the field. We serve 150 different global markets. Now, the US operation is run out of Anaheim, California. That is our warehouse, that is our sales team, that is our marketing, and that is our tech support. So when you call in to get tech support, you are dealing with a Zysel employee and somebody located here in North America and California. We don't outsource our support to third-party call centers. Those of you on the East Coast, if you call in early in the morning before our West Coast team gets here, you may get support from our German team. So in the few cases where you're not talking to someone in Anaheim, you are still talking to a Zysel employee just based out of our European office. So as a partner, you get access to some additional benefits here. You get access to, of course, a dedicated sales rep, the ability to do deal registration. So if you're working on a large project, the first one to bring it to us and register it gets discounts that no one else will have access to. We have our partner discounts, the automatic discounts that you get when you buy most of our different products through distribution as a partner. And the discount level changes based on what your current partnership level with us is, bronze, silver, or gold. You have a priority phone number you can use to get support. And we have another number of other little tools and stuff we have for you. Now, when it comes to the products that we are selling through the channel here, we're breaking them down into a couple main categories. Security appliances, those are your firewall UTM products, wireless solutions, switches, consumer routers and power line networking. We're not going to talk about those today, but those are products that are available to you. And then various different network management tools. We are not going to be talking about the telco products today. So we're going to start by talking about Nebula. We're going to start here because at this point, just about all of our major product lines support Nebula. You don't have to use Nebula, but they do support it. So it's probably a good idea to start by talking a little bit about what Nebula is. So Nebula is a network management tool. It is very similar to, say, Cisco's Meraki, if you're familiar with Meraki. Same sort of idea where you are managing all of your devices and all of your customers through a cloud interface. And this cloud interface is something that we host and run for you. So Nebula was designed from the ground up to make it easier to set up, configure, and deploy networks. So you can start getting things up and running in just a few minutes. Probably the longest thing that's going to take you time here, or at least for the initial network setup, is just creating your Nebula account if you don't already have one and linking it to your My Zysel account. After that, even before you buy any hardware, you can start setting up customers, setting up their sites, and doing configuration of the general site topology and the general settings you'd want to use. Once you do get the product in hand, you simply assign it to that customer and to that customer's site. And the way you can do that is just by using a QR code on the outside of the box. You simply use our mobile app, scan the QR code, and assign the product. And then once the product finally gets plugged in and turned on, it will automatically reach out to the cloud, see where it's supposed to be, and automatically download its configuration. So you can have product shipped to your office, you can scan it and assign it, and then ship it on site and not need to do anything on site to get the products up and running. The reason we can do that is because the Nebula agent is built into our products themselves. So there's no additional hardware you need. There's no cloud keys. There's no CNA devices. There's no wireless LAN controllers. There's also no software that you need to set up and run. Everything is done through the Nebula cloud, which is accessed through our website, nebula.zysel.com. And we do also have that mobile app as well. So once you get it set up, it's designed so you can access basically all of your customers' networks no matter where you are. As long as you have an internet connection and a web browser, you will be able to manage your customers. All configuration changes, all firmware updates are done through the cloud and over the air. So there's no need to go on site to a customer location to do any sort of firmware updates or things like that. It's all done automatically over the air. And Nebula is designed also to speed up some other common tasks. So we make it really easy to do VPNs if you're using Nebula. If you're doing site-to-site VPNs, you simply go in, choose the sites in Nebula you want to mesh together. You choose the topology you want to use, and Nebula handles everything else as far as configuration goes. When it comes to remote users trying to get back into the office, we have the ability to email out a script that will automatically configure the VPN client on iOS devices, Mac OS devices, and Windows devices. So those remote users can simply open up an email, run a script, and it'll automatically configure the VPN software to reach back to your central office. So Nebula has no limits on the number of customers or the number of sites that you can use or you can manage. When you log into Nebula and you're looking at a site, you will be presented with this dashboard here. These widgets up along the top, you can pick and choose which ones are displayed so you're seeing the information that you want to see when you first log in. To change between your customers, there's simple drop-down menus at the top. You can change your customer and change your site there to automatically jump between them. And you can see a lot of data here is available for you to see what's going on the network, which applications are using data, which users are using data, how many wireless users you have online, PoE utilization versus budget, et cetera, et cetera. So Nebula is free. So the free version of Nebula gives you access to an unlimited number of customers and unlimited number of devices that can be managed. There is no limit there. We do offer a Plus and Pro Pack licenses, which unlock additional features, but all of the core functionality is available in the free version of Nebula. So even if you do choose to use the paid solutions, if at any time you decide you're done using the paid versions, it'll simply revert back to the free version. So you never have to worry about being locked out of your hardware or losing the ability to manage your devices out in the field. Something very different from most other cloud management solutions out there. So when you're looking at our price sheet, you will see Nebula Flex. So Nebula Flex is telling you that this device can be used the traditional standalone way, or it can be used and managed with the Nebula Cloud. So you can switch between those modes, standalone and cloud. So that way you're never locked into just one or the other. You can standardize on one set of hardware and use them for both types of deployments. You will also see some products labeled as Nebula Flex Pro. So it's the same thing as Nebula. The only difference here is that you are getting 1 year of our professional pack. So again, this unlocks additional features, primarily aimed at MSP type stuff, reports and things like that. It'll unlock those for you out of the box. It'll come with a 1 year license. And then at the end of the 1 year, you either renew it or it drops back to the standard free version. In the case of wireless access points, Nebula Flex Pro models also have the ability to be managed with a wireless LAN controller. So again, if you're not interested in the cloud and you'd like to do a controller locally, you can do that with Nebula Flex Pro access points. So Nebula Flex and Nebula Flex Pro, it applies to all of our access points, most of our switches, and most of our security gateways at this point. And we will have a webinar coming up on Nebula. So if you'd like to learn more, like to learn some more of the differences between the standard version, Plus and Pro, we cover those in the dedicated Nebula webinar. So now we'll move on to some of our hardware products here, and we'll start with our security products, probably our best-selling products here in North America. So our security products now have been certified by ICSA Labs for 20 years straight with no lapses. For those of you not familiar with ICSA, they're an independent test lab that basically certifies firewall and VPN appliances, puts them through various tests to make sure they do what they say they can do. So we've been being certified by them now for 20 years straight. When it comes to UTM services, Unified Threat Management, your controller-based content filtering, antivirus, etc., rather than try to do all of that in-house like most of our competitors do, the way we choose to approach this is to partner with leaders in the industry. So as you'll see when you're looking at our UTM services, we have partnered with companies such as McAfee, WebRoot, Lastline, Trend Micro, and Bitdefender to provide those signatures that our UTM products use. So that's something that sets us apart from most of our competition who tries to do all of that in-house, even though these are very specialized functions that require very specialized skill sets. So now we'll go through and start talking about some of the features that you will find in our security appliances. Most of what I talk about is available on most models, and we'll get a little bit more in depth on that. But you've got the ability to do link aggregation groups, high availability, SSL packet inspection, being able to inspect what's going on even if the packets have been encrypted, the ability to integrate with Radius and Active Directory for doing user authentication and creating policies. On the VPN side of things, VPN high availability, so you can have multiple tunnels. If one tunnel fails, it automatically fails over to a different path tunnel. WAN load balancing, the ability to do multiple WAN ports. SSL VPN, so instead of having to have or using the built-in configuring that built-in VPN client in most operating systems, that you can use our SSL extender, which is a lot easier to use generally. We support L2 TP over IPsec for those remote users. We have an easy VPN button and wizard to help set up VPNs for you. And on the UTM side of things, we offer antivirus, content filtering, what we call layer 7 application intelligence. So this is your ability to be able to create policy rules based not just on ports and IP addresses and things, but we actually have a database of applications, and we can automatically recognize these different applications to make it easier for you to create these policy rules. And in some cases, we have the ability to go in and limit specific functions of those applications. On the ATP side of things, we have sandbox and machine learning, which we'll talk about here in a future slide. We have the ability to block botnets and malware, IDP, intrusion detection prevention, reputation filters, where you assign a reputation to different IP addresses. And most of our security appliances also have the ability to function as a wireless LAN controller on top of their normal firewall and UTM functionality, and the ability to do hotspot management. So you can have a single box solution providing firewall functionality, UTM functionality, VPN functionality, managing your APs locally, and the ability to run hotspot functionality such as a cafe, small hotels, things like that. Then, in addition to all of that, we are certified with both AWS and Microsoft's cloud platforms to create what's basically called a virtual private cloud. So you can host your applications in AWS or Microsoft's cloud solution and create a VPN tunnel essentially from your office to that cloud so that your local users can access those cloud hosted applications as if they were locally hosted applications, not your standard cloud applications. So when you're looking at our firewall products, we have 3 different lines that we have here. We have our VPN series, we have the USG Flex series, and we have the ATP series. The VPN series here Just as the name sounds, it is optimized for VPN functionality. So it's got a firewall and a lot of horsepower dedicated to being able to handle a lot of different VPN connections with a lot of VPN throughput. The USG Flex series is our traditional go-to UTM series of firewall appliances. So these are providing the full UTM array of services on top of the firewall functionality. And then now we've got the ATP series. So the ATP series is advanced threat protection. And it unlocks things like sandboxing and some new paradigms when it comes to how to handle security on the network. So we've got a little chart here showing you the differences between the three different lineups. As you can see here, the VPN series is really just focused on VPN functionality. It does have the ability to do content filtering. Moving up from there, the USG Flex, as you can see, it unlocks a lot of these UTM services, Geo Enforcer, the ability to do that layer 7 application control I was talking about earlier, malware blocker, intrusion prevention, email security and anti-spam, deep scan modes, etc. And then the ATP series has pretty much the same set of features as the other two, but unlocks for you sandboxing, this dual scan mode where you're both using the cloud and deep packet inspection simultaneously, IP reputation defender and DNS reputation defender functionality. So when you're looking at the different product lineups, and you'll see all these different models, the primary difference between the models is going to be horsepower, how fast they can pump data through and still apply all these security services, and the port configuration. In general, the features are going to remain the same across the entire lineup, with a couple of exceptions here and there. But in general, a VPN 100 and a VPN 300, the only difference is the port configuration and the horsepower. And that's true across all the lines. On the USG Flex, same thing. As you go across the models, the ports change, the horsepower changes, the core features remain the same. And same with the ATP series. So I do want to take a few seconds to talk about Sd-Wan. So Sd-Wan is something that you can unlock with the VPN series. So if you need an Sd-Wan appliance, you buy a VPN, whatever VPN model you need, and then you buy an Sd-Wan license to convert the unit into an Sd-Wan gateway. So for those of you not familiar with Sd-Wan, this is something that's used a lot on the enterprise side of things, not used necessarily that much for on the SMB side of things. It's basically for businesses that have multiple physical locations and they need a dedicated high quality connection between those locations. A very common application is doing voice over IP, where you've got one central server at the main office and all of your remote offices connect back to that main server for the voice functionality. So historically, this type of feature has been handled by large ISPs using something called an Mpls. So Mpls it's a dedicated connection from your ISP between these different physical locations. It's not going out over the public internet, so there's high security, there's low latency since you're not going through all these different hops, but the overall speeds tend to be kind of slow. So Sd-Wan is an idea that's designed to sort of supplant that and allow you to use a standard public internet connection to link your multiple offices together, but get the low latency and high reliability of Mpls over that standard internet connection. The way this works is by using VPNs and taking advantage of the fact that you've got a Sd-Wan appliance at each of these different offices. So you control the WAN interface at each remote location. And because you control that WAN location, there's some tricks that you can do when it comes to things like TCP, how TCP works. So TCP generally likes to slow itself down for reliability. But when you're controlling both ends and not just having to rely on everything being sort of industry standard based, you can tweak these settings to improve performance. There's stuff you can do to reduce latency. There's all sorts of other little interesting things you can do with SD-WAN because you control all the hops. So the end result of it is it allows you to essentially use a standard internet connection and sort of standard VPN connection and get fantastic performance. So we're showing an example here. This is between our Taiwan and German offices. We are transferring a Ubuntu ISO. It's just under 2 gig file. Here's the quality of the connection. There's a 290 millisecond round trip time, 0.3% packet loss, 3 millisecond jitter, so a pretty decent connection. But transferring using FTP over this connection took nearly 3 hours. By changing nothing except for making it an SD-WAN and controlling both ends and doing those little gimmicks, we were able to transfer this same file in 10 minutes. So a huge boost in reliability and throughput. And now I want to talk a little bit about our ATP series, because this is kind of different than what most of you are probably used to when it comes to doing UTM security. So the traditional way we do UTM, and this includes our own USG Flex devices, is you've got a bunch of signatures. In our case, they're coming from people like McAfee and Bitdefender. But you've got signatures. And when packets come in, you inspect those packets, you inspect the payload, and you create a signature of that, basically a hash, and you compare it to signatures in the cloud or signatures that you have downloaded onto your device. And then okay, we can match, this is good, this is bad. The problem that you run into is, one, there's only so many different signatures that you can have on your device at a time. And secondly, it takes time whenever something new, a new application comes along, new traffic behavior comes along, it takes a while for whoever's providing these UTM services to first discover this new type of traffic, then to figure out if it's good or bad, then to create the signatures, and then to push the signatures out to the connected devices, the gateways. So ATP is designed to sort of solve this issue here in the middle of these packets where we don't know if they're good or they're bad. And we do that by sandboxing this stuff and then uploading it to the cloud and using artificial intelligence and simulations to basically try to figure out what is going on with this traffic that we don't normally recognize. So we've got a bunch of different emulators on there to emulate different bits of hardware, different network configurations. And we run through all these simulations, seeing what is this thing actually doing? What is this traffic doing? Is it benign or is it a threat? And if we determine it's a threat, we can update basically in real time the signature to go, hey, these are bad packets, block them, or recognize, no, this is benign, go ahead and let these packets through. So the way this works with the ATPs is all the ATP appliances that we sell are linked together essentially through this cloud. So when a new threat comes out, maybe it launches in Europe first and it takes a couple days to make its way to North America. Well, our ATP users in Europe, their devices will see this new traffic, sandbox it, upload it to the cloud, and allow us to figure out what it is in a much, much faster way than if you were using traditional signatures. So you're able to use the cloud basically to be able to see everything as soon as those new signatures are created by the artificial intelligence. So in order to do this, we have partnered with a company called Blastline. They're one of the better companies out there when it comes to doing this type of artificial intelligence. So that's who we have partnered with to power these ATP devices and power the sandboxing and artificial intelligence. So that is it as far as security hardware goes. I'm going to talk just a couple slides here about something called Secu Reporter. So this is our monitoring and reporting tool for our security appliances. So the Zyxel series of products, the VPN series, USG Flex, ATP. So it is a cloud-based solution for basically gathering all of the log information that comes from all of your customers' security appliances. And then it sort of combines it all together to create analytics for you and to create nice visual views of what's going on. So you can see exactly, what's going on your customers' networks, what sort of threats have been seen and blocked, where those threats were coming from, which devices were targeted, et cetera. So it's a really nice tool to use when you're dealing with your customers when it comes time to renew their UTM services. So this is a great way to be able to go into them, generate some reports, and show them, look, this is all the time, these are all the employees that were blocked from visiting, say, porn sites or whatever at work. So there's our content filtering. That's why you should keep content filtering on there. Here's all of the attacks that came in that the antivirus blocked. Here's all the suspected IDP attacks, etc. So you can show them the benefits that they are getting from their UTM subscriptions. And it also gives you the ability to be able to decipher all of this network traffic and see if there's particular users that maybe are the cause of the problem. So you can quickly see which users are, visiting bad sites, whether it be something that content filtering wise you shouldn't want them going to, or whether it just be risky sites that are known to host malware and things like that. And much like Nebula, it's been designed from the ground up. So you have one place to go to be able to see all of your customers and see what's going on all in one spot. And these reports that you generate, you can add your logo to them, and you can set them up to automatically email your customers once a week, once a month. So you can show them, hey, look, this is what I've done for you. This is how I've protected you. So that's it for security. We'll now move on to switches, and boy, do we have a lot of switches. So I'm going to start by talking about the naming scheme. So when you're looking, at our price sheet that we send out, or you're looking at distribution, if you can remember these naming rules, it'll help you figure out, what switch you're looking at, what it offers, or maybe what switch you should be looking for. So if the switch starts with ES, and very few of them do here in North America, that tells you it's a 100 megabit switch. If it starts with GS, such as a GS 220-28, that's telling you that all of the ports support 1 gig connections. If it starts with XS, it's telling you that all of the ports are multi-gig ports. Maybe up to 10 gigs, maybe up to 5 gigs, depends on the model, but everything's going to be every port is going to be faster than 1 gig. If you see XGS, that's telling you all the regular ports are 1 gig, but that there are also 10 gig uplink ports or multi-gig uplink ports on the switch. And then again, this is one you don't see here in North America. MGS was our Metro series of switches. For the most part, those aren't offered here in North America. And then when you're looking at the model number, you will often see a letter at the end. If you see P or HP, it's telling you it's a PoE device. If you see just P, it's telling you it's the standard 802.3 AF, the old 15.4 watt maximum PoE. I'm not sure if we've got any switches that still only offer that. We may have phased them all out here in North America. Most of your switches you will say HP, high power. So that's telling you it's 802.3 AT or 802.3 BT, depending on the model. So those support up to either 30 or 60 watts of power per port. And if you see it ends in an F, it's telling you that basically all of the ports on the switch are fiber ports. There are no copper ports on the switch. Another thing which maybe causes confusion for some of you when you're new to the company is we have what we call these combo ports on our switches. So these are your uplink ports. And so in this configuration, you may see and look at this here and say, well, there's 4 uplink ports. But no, these are actually combo ports. These are 2 ports. So the top section here, this is all 1 port. This is all 1 port. And it gives you the flexibility on these 2 uplink ports for you to choose whether you want to use the copper interface or a fiber interface for the uplink port. So in this case, it's an 8-port switch with 2 uplinks. So we would probably call this, I can't see it on here, I think it's an 8 HP. So you would see it either being labeled as 8 HP for the 8 ports, or you may see it labeled as a 10 HP to indicate the 2 uplink ports. So when it comes to SFP, we have 1 gig SFP ports and 10 gig SFP plus ports. So just keep that in mind. If you are looking to do 10 gig, you should be using SFP plus ports instead of SFP. For the most part, you can use SFP plugs and SFP plus outlets. They're generally backwards compatible, but not always. But you absolutely cannot use an 10 gig SFP plus transceiver in a standard SFP port. And when it comes to stacking, we offer virtual stacking, but we do have some switches that offer true dedicated linked stacking. So that's done through special 10 gig fiber stacking ports. And we do sell a special direct attached cable specifically for doing these links. So now we'll try to divvy up our switches into a bunch of different product categories. So generally, you see here are what we're calling effortless on this slide. These are our unmanaged switches. So it's the 100 series, the 1000 series, the 1100 series, the 1300 series. So if you're looking at something and you see GS108B, that 100 or specifically that 108 is telling you this is a unmanaged switch. If you see a GS 1100-16, same thing, it's an unmanaged switch. The next step up here is our 1200 and 1900 series. These have a basic web interface and unlock some of the standard higher end type switch features that you would need to manage, such as the ability to do VLAN tagging and things like that. The 1900 series offers more functionality than the 1200 series does. So the 1900 series gets you, for instance, SNMP, the 1200 series does not. And then going up from there is our 1350, our 1920, and our 1930 series. These are still web managed switches, so all configuration is being done through a web interface. Most of these can also be managed with Nebula if you prefer to use Nebula instead. And these just unlock additional features that aren't available in the 12 and 1900 series. And then going up here to our ultimate series of products, these are our true layer 2, layer 3 switches. These all have a command line interface in addition to the web GUI. And again, looking at it here from a Nebula point of view, the 1350s, the 1920s, the 1930s, these all support Nebula. And the 2220s and 3800s on the Ultimate series also support Nebula. So we're just going to go through a lot of these different models here real quick. Like I said, there's a lot here, but it's just showing here. Here's the 1200 series family. Starts off here with a GS 1200-5, available in both the PoE and non-PoE versions. 8-port version of that. And then this is also where you see a lot of our entry-level multi-gig switches. So these are switches here which have a bunch of 1 gig ports, but then also have 10 gig uplinks and multi-gig uplink ports also available on them. In the 1900 series here, you see these are more, well, the 1200s, whoops, there we go. Well, the 1200s here are desktop based. Most of the 1900s here are going to be rack designed, so they're designed to fit in a rack. And again, they unlock a bunch of additional features here that aren't generally found in the 1200s. Going up to the 1920s, again, same thing. It's giving you more PoE budget. It's giving you more functionality and features inside the interface itself. The 1930s, these are all going to be either XGS or XS series. So these will all have at least some 10 gig ports on them. And then going up to our powerhouse, this is our standard switch and probably one of our best sellers, the GS 2220s. So again, these are true layer 2 switches. They've got that full layer 2 functionality that you're looking for in there. These support Nebula, and they come with the Nebula Pro Pack licenses bundled with them. And then on the high end here, these are our layer 3 and layer 3 light switches. So I want to talk briefly about PoE. We offer something that not all of our competitors offer, which is intelligent PoE management. Basically, this is the ability for us to be able to actually look and monitor what each port, connected device in each port is using for PoE power. And then free up the unused portion that would normally be assigned to that device. So it can be used for other devices. So this allows you to be able to more efficiently use the PoE budget on the switch. So this is just showing here, we've got an IP phone Classification using the standard way of doing PoE is that this is a class 3 device, and as such, the switch should reserve 15.4 watts for each one of these phones that's plugged in. In actuality, though, the phones never draw more than 9 watts of power. So by using our intelligence mode here, we can free up additional switches and fit them on here. So you can see here, if we tried to connect 24 phones here, it would require 370 watts of power if you were using it the standard classification method. But by using our special intelligent consumption mode, we're only using 216 watts of power. So now you can plug more devices on there. Same story here when it comes to PoE. We've got a pan tilt zoom IP camera here. By classification, it requires 30 watts of power be reserved for each device plugged in. With consumption mode, though, we only need to reserve 16 watts of power. So we're only using 320 watts of your power budget versus 600 watts of power budget. I have a few slides here to talk about our GS1350 series switches. These are a very unusual type of switch. They've got some features you may not be used to seeing on switches. These were designed originally specifically for being used in IPTV or IP camera security deployments, but these features can also find a lot of uses in non-IP TV scenarios. So the first one is you can provide data and PoE up to 250 meters versus the standard 100 meters that you get with most PoE switches. Now, part of the way we do this is by dropping the speed to 10 megabits per second. So as long as your connection can, or your application can work with a 10 megabit connection, you can do a single 250 meter Cat5 cable run and provide power and data to your connected device. So it's really handy for those long runs. You're not having to put in intermittent boosters or switches to keep the signal going. We also have the ability to do continuous PoE. So if for some reason the switch needs to reboot or apply configuration changes, while the data connection may go down, it will continue to provide PoE to the connected devices, so those devices don't have to reboot. So as soon as the data connection comes back online, those devices will be online, ready to go, instead of having to wait for them to boot up. And some of those cameras take a long time to boot up. We've also got the ability through our GUI to detect the connected devices and provide some data on them, including the IP address of the device. So if it has a web GUI, you can simply click on our interface and it'll jump you over to that device's management GUI. We also have the ability to automatically recover connected devices. We can use either ping or LLDP to detect whether or not a device is still responding and behaving. And if it goes down for a certain period of time that you define, we can automatically power cycle that port to bring that device back online without requiring any sort of manual intervention. It'll be done automatically. And these switches have also been boosted up as far as their protection from static and discharges and surges. And then lastly here, just letting you know that we do offer a number of different SFP and SFP Plus modules to use with your switches for fiber. So we'll move on there and talk a little bit about our wireless products. For the most part, we're going to divvy up our products into two different categories here, our flexible series and our ultimate series. These devices are Nebula Flex. The ultimate series are Nebula Flex Pro. So the differences are going to be if you buy something in the ultimate series, it gets you 1 year of Pro Pack bundled in the box. Also, these APs in the ultimate series can be managed with a local controller, whether it's a dedicated NXC controller or whether it's the controller that's built into our security appliances. In addition, the ultimate series generally provides more advanced antenna technologies as well, although it's not 100% there. So one thing to talk about here is the way we design our access points. If you've seen us at a trade show, you may have seen this demonstrated in person. But this is something you can do if you've already been selling another vendor's access points. When you get one of our access points, just feel them and hold hold our device in one hand and any other vendor's device in the other hand, and you will probably notice that our device weighs a lot more. So why is that? And it has to do with the way we do engineering. So one of the things you'll notice is our external housing has a lot of vent holes for heat to release. So when you're dealing with solid state devices like this, one of the leading causes of failure is heat fatigue over time. So basically the heat cycling, the heat buildup in the devices can cause the chips themselves, the little micro switches in those chips to fail. It can also cause solder joints to fail. So we've got vent holes to make sure heat can get out. And then you will find on most of our APs, we'll find a large metal, essentially a heat sink designed to draw heat off of the board and vent it out those holes. Another thing you will notice on here is you will see a lot more shielding on the board than you will see on our competitors' products. So not only do we provide the standard shielding around the Wi-Fi devices, we provide additional shielding to help block EMI, but also to filter out 4G and 5G. These can be in very neighboring bands to our 5 gigahertz and 2.4 gigahertz and can cause interference and overlap. So we've put additional shielding on there to help block out that 4G and 5G interference. You will notice we then have another metal plate generally above the PCBA. So this acts again to help draw heat off the board. It also acts as an RF deflector. And then you will see our antennas are mounted onto their own PCBA or their own little mounting bracket inside off the board. Most of our competitors, even the really, really expensive ones, are putting their antennas directly on the PCBA. By creating separation between the antennas and the PCBA, it helps with signal to noise ratio. It can make a big difference on those edge case connections. Another thing to talk about here is we do not use any electrolytic capacitors. After heat fatigue, that's probably the most common cause of failure on a solid state device. So we only use solid state capacitors on our hardware. And this design philosophy is essentially applied to all of our APs, whether you are buying a $99 NWA 1123 or you're buying a $600 WAC 650, they're all following this philosophy as far as the design goes to make sure our products can last. And that's why we can offer a lifetime warranty on a $100 AP. So we've got another technology here. It's called dual optimized antennas. So basically your traditional access point is designed to be mounted on a ceiling, pointed down, and the antenna is designed to spread that signal out as far and wide as it can. It's sort of an umbrella type pattern. It works great in most cases, provided you can mount your AP on the ceiling. A lot of times though, you can't. You end up having to mount it on walls or other surfaces. So when you do that, you end up in a situation where the antenna pattern or the signal coming off of that AP is suboptimal. You end up sending a bunch of your signal up into the ceiling, down into the floor. If it's a multi-story building, it can cause interference issues between the floors. It just provides generally poor coverage. So what we've done on some of our APs that offer this dual optimized antenna is we give you two sets of antennas, your standard ceiling mount antenna, but also an antenna that's optimized for wall installation. And you can switch between those two patterns based on where you've installed the individual device. So it gives you a lot of flexibility of where you mount the device and making sure you're getting optimal coverage. Excuse me. The next technology we have here is called smart antenna. So, us and Ruckus are probably the only two guys out there that push smart antenna technology. Cisco doesn't have it, Aruba doesn't have it, Netgear doesn't have it, Ubiquiti doesn't have it. And basically the idea behind smart antenna technology is instead of using your standard single antenna pattern coverage area, let me show you an example here. So this is just showing here a standard antenna. You've got this circular pattern. You introduce a source of interference. In this case, it's a microwave, but it can be another access point operating on the same channel. It can be a wireless camera. Lots of stuff that's using that same 2.4 and 5 gigahertz spectrum that standard Wi-Fi does. So that causes what we call co-channel interference if you have two or more devices using the same channel at the same time in the same general vicinity of each other. With smart antenna technology, instead of having that one fixed antenna pattern, we have the ability to literally go through hundreds of different antenna patterns in real time, essentially. So we can optimize the antenna so that it shoots and directs the signal directly to where the client device is, but also in such a way that its receiving coverage is not picking up that source of RF interference or is minimizing it, reducing the amount of interference you will run into. So it makes a huge difference in RF noisy environments. It makes a huge difference in environments where you've got a lot of users on the same access point, or in areas where you've got a lot of access points in the same general area, such as a condo, such as an office building where there's a lot of little small offices around each other, things like a conference room or an expo center. Smart antenna just makes a huge difference as far as the performance goes. And the nice thing about smart antenna is it's something that's done entirely on the AP. It doesn't require anything special from the client, and it works even with client devices that are mobile and moving around. It is able to adjust in essentially real time. So we've got an example here. We've got our WAX 650S, and we compared it to the Aruba 515. Both of these are 4x4 Wi-Fi 6 devices. And you can see here our performance in green versus theirs in blue. You will see here when it comes to signal strength, we've got both a stronger RF signal coming off of our board, but we've also got this smart antenna. And it makes a difference here on the far end of things. You'll notice we got a much smaller drop off than what you're seeing over here. So it makes a big difference. Now, obviously, I can tell you that, and if you want to learn more about it, we have a Wi-Fi 101 webinar I do every other month or so, and we go a little bit more in depth into how smart antenna works. But there is a third-party source here you can talk to about smart antenna. This is the University of Brescia in Italy. Their networking group a few years ago decided to test claims made by us and Ruckus. And so they bought our APs, they bought Ruckus's APs, they bought Cisco APs, and they bought Aruba APs, and decided to compare them and see whether or not it works. So this is their full report there. If you're looking for a nice summary and white paper, just Google Zysel smart antenna. It should pull up the white paper where we summarize the key parts of the results. But the general was that when it comes to real world environments, there's up to a 70% better performance when using smart antenna technology, and that we performed up to 45% better than Ruckus's smart antenna technology. So we will talk a little bit here about Wi-Fi 6. We do offer Wi-Fi 6 products now. I think Wi-Fi 6 is becoming pretty standard, but some key things here on Wi-Fi 6 is it's designed to increase capacity, both the number of users per AP, but also how close APs can be together without interfering with each other. So this is a technology that addresses some of the same issues that smart antenna addresses, but it does it in a different way. And because of that, you can stack smart antenna on top of Wi-Fi 6 and get even enhanced coverage of using either just one of those technologies alone. Wi-Fi 6 is the first new Wi-Fi standard that works on both 5 gigahertz and 2.4 since 11N. So your 11AC and 11AC Wave 2 products, they only improved and put that technology on the 5 gigahertz radio. So it's a huge step up for your 2.4 radio. And it introduces a number of new technologies here that are designed to solve many of the issues we have when it comes to Wi-Fi. OFDMA allows us to better allocate airtime between multiple devices. We now have the ability to have multiple users both sending and receiving data at the same time without issues. Better scheduling of the individual users so the devices come back online more efficiently and waste less time waiting around for a turn to go. Things such as BSS coloring, which allow packets to be basically tagged so devices know whether or not they should listen to those packets. It's a huge step up over 11AC as far as the quality of the connection. So moving on here, I just want to talk briefly, in addition to the Nebula Cloud, which we talked at the beginning of today's webinar, we also do offer the on-premise controller options. And it's very similar to the cloud-based solution, but for those of you that don't trust the cloud or your customers don't want to use the cloud for whatever reason, we do have these controller-based management options available for you here on our APs. So this is just showing here the model of firewall appliance, how many APs it can manage out of the box, how many APs it can manage with upgrade licenses. And with that, guys, that is today's webinar. I know I've been going through it fast. I know there's been a lot of topics covered here, but if you have some questions, you can go ahead and send those in right now using the question and answer interface, and I will answer them for you. Otherwise, reach out to your salesperson, Jacob, David, Andy, and, let them know anything here you'd like to learn more about, more in depth, any topics you'd like to have a deep dive on. And just to let you know, most of our webinars are recorded and then posted to our YouTube channel, Zysel America channel. So if a webinar comes through and you missed it, or maybe there's a webinar coming up, but you don't want to wait, chances are we've had it already. So you can simply go to our YouTube channel and find a recording of a previous version of the webinar. We do have user forums available for you, forum.zysel.com. It is not only a place for users of Zysel equipment to talk to each other and help each other, it is monitored by our support and R&D teams, and it is the first place where announcements get posted. So it's a great thing to keep an eye on that to see what's going on. And of course, my email is up there on the screen. I am Sean Rogers, SHAWNR @zysel.com. Feel free to reach out to me offline. I've got one question here from Eric. Let me take a look at this question. Can we use Zysel APs with any other brands in case a client would like to move slowly from one brand to yours? Yeah, absolutely. We're standard access point, so you can slowly add us in to new areas or slowly swap out old stuff. If you want to use Nebula, you can absolutely use Nebula. A common mistake people think is that if they want to use Nebula to manage some devices, that everything needs to be Nebula, and it does not. The Nebula cloud works with the individual devices. So you can have, a Cisco firewall that you've already got in place there. You can be using HP switches and still just be using Nebula just to manage your Zysel access points. Obviously, if you've got other brands of access points, you won't be able to manage those other APs with Nebula, but they can still operate on the same network. You're going to have the same functionality because they're all following the same 802.11 base standards for most of that core functionality. So that's absolutely possible. And no, you don't need the whole network to be Zysel or Nebula based to use Nebula. And I don't have any other questions, so I'm going to go ahead and end today's webinar. Again, if you do have something, just go ahead and highlight it real quick and just email it to me, seanr@zysel.com, or just reach out to your salesperson. Again, Andy, Jacob, David, they're there to answer your questions, and they'll be able to loop in myself or Try or our sales engineer, Marcus, if needed. Thanks for joining us, guys. I appreciate you turning out and letting me speak here for an hour. Thank you.